I call the meeting for West Whiteland Township Board of Supervisors for Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. We'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, and just liberty and justice for all. First on the agenda is that Supervisor Joanne Kelton has resigned, so I'll make a motion to accept her resignation.
And I'll second that motion.
Any public comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. The Board of Supervisors met on October 9th, October 17th, and prior to tonight's meeting to discuss matters of personnel and litigation. Native plant sale is Saturday, October 25th, 12 p.m. To 2 p.m. at Cato Park. A drug take-back day to dispose used or unused or expired prescription medication for Saturday, October 25th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Township Building. Open house for Township's new comprehensive plan is Wednesday, October 29th, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Township Building. I would highly advise all the residents to come and attend. It is a comprehensive plan for the next 20 to 30 years for our township, what we want it to look like, what it should be. So please come and give your input. Election day is Tuesday, November 4th. Thank you. Any public comments from audience about items that are not on the agenda? None. We'll start with the hearing.
All right. I guess I can make a motion to continue the hearing, right?
Yeah. I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Can you turn your mics on, please? Thank you.
So the first thing, good evening. First thing I would like to do is supplement the exhibits, and I have a number of additional exhibits. I'll hand this out, then I'll introduce them.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm going to have marked, or I've already marked and have handed out exhibits, pardon me, 35, 36, 37, and 38. And I'd like to identify them for the record. Exhibit 835 is an email chain from the township manager that starts on Friday, July 18, 2025, and that was from me, Pam, asking about our ability to purchase up to 1,000 EDUs. The second page, going from the back, is a July 18, 2025 email from Pam to me, a whole load of people, telling us about the Downingtown area authorities' expansion plans that were underway. And then the third one is an August 19, 2025 email that I read from my iPhone at our last hearing. I think it's quick, but it addresses some of the things that Mr. Dunn asked about. Just a quick update on the Dara expansion project. Their schedule is shifted with bidding now anticipated in spring of 2026 and project completion pushed to 2030, 2031. We don't agree with that. We've had direct conversation with Dara, but it's not relevant here. Thank you again for meeting with us last week to discuss project phasing. Based on our preliminary review, the initial request for an additional 234 EDUs appears feasible. We are currently double checking our figures to ensure everything aligns. We will also be reviewing the future phases to accommodate the planned additional 500 EDUs. We'll be in touch within the next week to schedule a follow-up meeting with you and Fred to continue our coordination. So I just want to make this clear. Sewer capacity, the ability to get sewer is not a requirement for master plan approval. Because Mr. Dunn raised this question, I thought that I had to respond to it.
You want to respond?
Number 36.
No. So when you say it's not a requirement, now the master plan is viable for the first 5-year plan, right?
Say that again?
The lifespan of the master plan is 5 years. If you do not get the EDUs within the 5 years, what's the point of approving a plan that cannot be built in the feasible time frame?
There's nothing that says that the lifespan of the master plan is 5 years.
Can you?
Sorry, I don't have my microphone on. Give the requirements up.
Not at the moment, I believe, but what it says in our zoning ordinance under the master plan requirement says that an approved master plan may be amended after 5 years. I don't know that we actually have a
I know that
time limit.
Master plan ordinance pretty well. Master plan ordinance has got a provision that says basically that it cannot be amended for 5 years. There's no provision that says that a master plan expires after 5 years. Let me go on. Document number 36, I referred to at the last hearing. I said that we would be filing our request for exemption from filing a planning module and that the materials were completed. Document number 36 is that document, and it will be filed with the township this week, and it does exactly what I said in my testimony. It spells out the first phase of our development and the need for 248 EDUs. Number 37 is Eric Hetzel's curriculum vitae. I said at the last hearing that my only witness tonight would be Matt Hammond, our traffic engineer. After reading the transcript and digesting the comments from board members, I thought it would be important to the public and for this record, again, even though it's not required, that we introduce the fiscal impact study that we gave to the township back in June and have Eric give us the highlights of that fiscal impact study. And with that, I'd like to call Matt Hammond to testify. One second. Sorry, I got to get a number of pages into this. I'm sorry, did you swear? Yes. Mr. Hammond? Mr. Hammond, while I'm looking for my notes, would you tell us your name, your educational background, and your experience?
Sure. Again, Matthew Hammond, Hammond. I'm Executive Vice President with Traffic Planning and Design, Inc. Graduated from Drexel University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering and have been practicing as a traffic engineer for the past 26 years. Hold a professional engineer's license not only in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but 11 other states and
And I draw your attention to...
Excuse me, Mr. Hammond, could you put your microphone on, please?
it wasn't, sorry.
Exhibit number 31, and ask you if that is your curriculum vitae. Let me get it for you.
Yes, Exhibit 31 is a copy of my curriculum vitae.
And does that curriculum vitae contain an accurate representation of your educational and professional background?
Yes, it does.
Could you briefly tell us your educational and professional background? I think you already told us.
Education, yes. So again, graduated from Drexel University with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. Have been practicing as a traffic engineer for actually over 30 years at this point, and I do hold my professional licenses in 12 states, including the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as well as the District of Columbia. I have been involved in hundreds of projects over my career. This serves in the capacity of overseeing the planning and design of, again, multiple projects, and served as an expert witness in over 2,000 hearings in my career.
And are you the traffic engineer for this project?
I am.
I asked that Mr. Hammond be accepted as an expert in traffic engineering.
Any objections?
No.
So moved.
Thank you.
So, Matt, are you the traffic engineer for the proposed development that is the subject of this conditional use
Yes.
application?
Yes, I am.
And was your firm engaged, what was your firm engaged to do in connection with the redevelopment of the Exton Mall property that is the subject of tonight's application?
My firm was engaged to cooperate and coordinate with the project team in preparing the necessary traffic-related documents and eventually plans associated with the overall redevelopment of the mall.
Now, I direct your attention to Exhibit A32. Is this a copy of the parking study that your firm was asked to prepare?
Yes, it is. It's dated June 16th of 2025.
So please explain to the board what you evaluated with respect to this study and to mall and future parking requirements.
Sure. So we took a multi-pronged approach in preparation of what I would say in my career is probably the most comprehensive parking study we've had to complete. First step, obviously, was identifying the uses being proposed. And one of those uses, as you are aware, the Boscov's, is proposed to remain as part of this redevelopment. So in order to obtain as accurate data as possible as it relates to parking, we went out and counted the number of occupied parking spaces during the peak periods, which would be a Friday and Saturday for the Boscov's retail. Those counts were conducted in December to account for the holiday shopping season. Again, we wanted to provide an accurate depiction of the amount of parking that we would anticipate being utilized by the Boscov's. So those counts were conducted and that data was collected. We then looked at the proposed redevelopment, the various uses within the redevelopment, and broke it into two components. One being the multifamily portion of the development, which included most of the residential units, the 172 townhomes proposed, as well as the 165 age-restricted units, and a small retail plaza in the vicinity of the multifamily. We looked at the number of parking spaces that were proposed as part of the plan, and then compared that to the number of parking spaces that were required by not only the township ordinance, but also through industry standard methodology, which is based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual. And that manual is a compilation of data that's collected at various uses throughout the country to provide engineers and planners the ability to project the number of parking spaces that would be required. When looking at that portion of the development, we found that the parking supply or the parking that was being provided far exceeded the number of parking spaces being required by not only the township ordinances, but also the industry standard methodology. We then looked at the remainder of development, which obviously contains a number of various uses, including the apartments, the restaurants, the health club, the mainline health facility, some of the office, the banks, the daycare facility, and just the general commercial space being proposed. We then looked again at how many parking spaces were provided as part of that portion of the redevelopment and compared it to the ordinance requirements, as well as, again, standard industry methodology. And what we found is that based on the ordinance requirements, that the facility itself, with the parking proposed inclusive of the reserve parking, which has been provided on the plan, would we would be approximately 92 spaces short when you're looking at the ordinance inclusive of the reserved parking. However, I would note that when I say 92 spaces short, we're talking about nearly 4,000 parking spaces being provided at the property at full build-out, again, inclusive of the reserved parking. So it's not as if there's a significant number of parking spaces that would be required in addition to what's being provided. It's that there's a factor of safety within those calculations that show that based on the ordinance, we would be 92 spaces short. Now, if you take into account the industry standard methodology and look at, on top of that, the sharing of uses. And what I mean by that is that every use, not every use, but most of the uses on the property are complementary to one another. In other words, the office parking peaks at a certain time period, and those peaks are different than the restaurant parking, which are different than the residential parking, which are different than some of the retail parking, and the other various uses. So when you take all of that into account and you look at the interaction between the uses, we have provided significantly more parking than would be required.
Now that, let me just interrupt you there. Using the ITE or Urban Land Institute, whatever, parking requirements or measures, is permitted by the ordinance, is it not?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
So when you say we're short 90 parking spaces, that's if you take a literal interpretation of the ordinance breaking down the parking for each specific use. But that's before you take into consideration the analysis that the ordinance permits you to do by having a shared parking analysis.
Correct. If you looked at the if you look strictly at the various uses, the ordinance requires that you look at each individual use and apply the number of parking spaces necessary for that individual use. It does not account for the fact that there's interaction between uses, especially when you have a development that has a significant number of uses that are mixed and are complementary of one another. It basically says, for apartments, you need to provide X number of parking spaces per unit. For general office, you need to provide X number of parking spaces per 1,000 square feet, so on and so forth. And then it requires you to add all those parking spaces up. So again, as mentioned, it does not take into account that interaction and the sharing of spaces with those complementary uses.
Was the parking study reviewed by Bowman, the township's traffic engineer?
Yes, it was.
And was there a review letter from Bowman?
Yes, there have been multiple reviews. The latest review letter, I believe, is dated September 9th of 2025.
And are there Bowman review letters in this binder as Exhibit A10C and A13C? Let me get them for you. I'm showing you yeah, 10C. Is this Bowman's March 11, 2025 review letter?
Yes, that is a review letter dated March 11th, 2025, based on the initial parking analysis completed in February of 2025.
And you responded to this letter, did you not?
We did. As a matter of fact, throughout the course of this process, there have been numerous revisions to the plans which required us to prepare a revised and frankly more comprehensive parking analysis, which is the parking analysis that we were just discussing dated June 16th of 2025.
I believe that's A13C.
Yes, so the next review letter we received, A13C, is a review letter from Bowman dated July 8th, 2025.
Did Bowman concur with your findings and conclusions contained in the parking study that you prepared?
They did, with the caveat that between the completion of the June 2025 parking study and the review letter received, there were revisions that were made to the plan that altered some of the square footages contained within the master plan. I would classify those changes as minor as it relates to the overall parking analysis. But yes, generally they concurred with the findings of the parking study, especially with the analysis, the various analyses that were provided.
Taking all of this information into account, what conclusions can you make with regard to the adequacy of the off-street parking provided for both the residential and commercial portions of the proposed development?
Well, it's our opinion, based on the data that's been provided, the analysis that's been conducted, and the review letters received from the township's professionals, that the parking supply proposed would be sufficient to serve the proposed redevelopment project. In addition to the fact that we also have provided alternative parking or future reserve parking that, if needed, would exceed the township zoning ordinance requirements.
Let's go on to the second part of your assignment, which was a transportation impact assessment. You prepared that document, and it's dated, I believe, June 16, 2025. Is that right?
Correct. Same date as the parking analysis.
And I'm showing you exhibit, I believe it's A33, and can you identify that?
Yes. Yeah.
A33.
A33 is a copy of the transportation impact study for the walk at Exton Town Center, dated June 16th, 2025.
And are you familiar with the provisions of the township zoning ordinance that govern traffic impact studies?
I am, section 32542.
Was the traffic impact study you prepared for this project conducted in accordance with the requirements of that section 32542?
It was, and I would like to make one point with respect to the traffic study. It's been our understanding that as part of the master plan process, a traffic study is not required to be submitted. However, the applicant tasked the project team with providing as much information, as much detail as possible, so that the township could make an informed decision. So yes, we did complete a traffic study, although not required, and it was a very comprehensive study, including nearly 1,200 pages of data and analyses.
So my understanding, that is, that evaluated 21 separate intersections. Maybe you want to tell us,
Sure.
rather than me telling you, to the board. What did you do?
Sure. So in preparation or in completion of the traffic study, as we would with any traffic study, we looked at the study area and determined the number of intersections that we felt would be most affected by the proposed redevelopment. That included 21 intersections, inclusive of the existing access points serving the current Exton Mall property. We studied those 21 intersections during 3 time periods: the AM peak hour of a typical weekday, which is typically falls between 6:30 and 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. We looked at the weekday PM peak hour, which is, again, the time period between approximately 3:30 and 6 or 6:30 on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And then obviously, with respect to the retail components as well as the surrounding commercial areas, we looked at the Saturday midday peak hour, which is a time period between about 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. on a typical Saturday. So we counted those 21 intersections during those time periods to give ourselves an idea of the amount of traffic that was currently traveling through those intersections, and also provide the ability to determine how those intersections are currently operating. We then looked at the future conditions of the roadway network. What I mean by future conditions is the year in which we feel the development would be open and operating. And based on the analysis, we looked at a time period of the year 2030. But because of the size of the development and the uses proposed, we went one step beyond and looked at what's called a design year. So we looked at the 2030 conditions, which is when we felt that the development could be open and operating. And then we looked at a 5-year period beyond that time as well, to make sure that whatever improvements were being proposed or were necessary would also be relevant after the redevelopment was completed. We then looked at trip generation. How many trips would be generated by the proposed redevelopment? Now, keep in mind that while the majority of the mall is currently vacant, there are still some uses in place, and there is still the use of the mall, throughout the week. So there is some traffic being generated by that mall today. So it is not all new. However, again, we wanted to look at the amount of traffic the development would generate and then superimpose that on the study area intersections to determine the impact that the development would have. I would also note there is a section within the study that talks about a comparison between the amount of traffic that is generated by the proposed development as well as the amount of traffic that would be generated by the mall if it was 100% occupied. The mall is slightly less than 1 million square feet. So when you look at the amount of traffic to be generated by the mall at full occupancy versus the development, the PM and Saturday peak hours are significantly less. When I say significantly less, I mean that the redevelopment would generate significantly less traffic than would the mall at full occupancy.
You're talking about if magically somebody came in, did enough refurbishing, and put tenants in all of the places, all the spaces.
That's correct. So the proposed redevelopment would generate about half of what the mall would generate during its peak time period. But again, we just made the comparison so everyone's aware of the amount of traffic that we're talking about here. It did not factor into our analysis, and it wasn't assumed that we took a credit for traffic for a mall at 100% occupancy. It was more of information to be able to visualize the amount of traffic the mall would generate or did generate in its heyday versus what's being proposed as part of this redevelopment.
So just so I understand that, you measured the amount of traffic coming in and out of the mall now, correct?
Correct.
You estimated the amount of traffic that will be coming in and out of the mall upon completion.
Correct.
And you then compared the amount of traffic projected against what you believe would have been the traffic if the mall were fully occupied.
That is correct.
And if the mall was fully occupied, traffic would be much more than the traffic you're projecting.
Yes, with the caveat that during the AM peak hour, because of the addition of the residential component, that the volumes of a fully occupied mall and the volumes of the proposed redevelopment would be very similar. There wouldn't be as much of a difference between the two during that AM peak hour, again, because of the addition of the residential. Whereas malls don't normally have a significant amount of traffic entering and exiting during that morning peak hour.
And you're saying mall though, but you're also, you know, you have townhouses and apartments and you have people going back and forth to work and so forth like that. I mean,
He included that.
that's all included?
Yes.
All those folks going in and out and, you know,
Are you saying all the folks in and out today, or all
No.
the folks in and out in the future?
in and out in the future?
Correct. All out in the future. So I guess, to be clear, what I'm saying is we take into account the full development, the full redevelopment and all of the uses, the residential, the commercial, the restaurant, the medical office, the office. We take into account all the traffic associated with those uses. And we compare it to the mall if it was 100% occupied. That during the morning peak hour, the volumes generated by those two different uses is very similar.
Yeah, it's not really a comparison though.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean,
However,
because a lot of the development wasn't around when that mall was fully open either, but I'll let you continue. I'm sorry.
yeah, so again, it has, as I mentioned before, it has nothing to do with my analysis.
Mhm.
The analysis doesn't take into account a mall hypothetically being occupied at 100%.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the analysis.
Mhm.
We're just providing a comparison to show that this mall, when fully occupied, or if fully occupied, would generate significantly more traffic than what is being proposed. So in a sense, if you go back to, you know, when the mall was in its heyday, the 80s and the 90s, early 2000s, there's significantly more traffic in and out of those 7 existing driveways than what is being proposed as part of the redevelopment.
Let's get off of that.
Yeah, putting that aside,
Yeah.
How about the comparison between what's coming in and out of the mall now in its present condition
Yeah.
and future traffic?
But just to go back a little bit though, you know, remember that the development, all the developments that are around and surrounding back in that day weren't here.
right.
You know, so that has to be part of that too, right? I mean,
It does. Again, it doesn't factor into my analysis whatsoever. So my analysis, so the traffic study looks at the traffic volumes that exist out there today,
mhm.
right? So the volumes during the AM, the PM, and Saturday peaks. What exists out there today with all of the development that's been built in the area. It looks at any other potential development that will be built in the area within the design year, the future years, and how that would affect the intersections. It includes general growth in traffic for developments that are unknown, just growth in traffic in the area. And then on top of that, it includes all of the traffic associated with the proposed development. That's what the analysis looks at. So the analysis looks at today, existing conditions, future conditions without the development, but with background growth in any other developments. And then it looks at the future projected conditions, which includes all of that traffic plus the traffic associated with the proposed redevelopment. That's what the analysis does. That's what it looks at. That's what we're required to do per 32542 as well as per PennDOT standards.
So let's go on, maybe I sidetracked you a little by asking you to talk about the comparisons of the three, what the mall would create if it were fully occupied, what it's doing now, and its projection. And let's put that concept aside and address really Mr. Dunn's question. Tell us, I think you have to tell us again what you were measuring with your traffic impact study.
What we were measuring with our traffic impact study was the difference between the future year with the development fully built out versus the future year without the development built out. That is truly, at the end of the day, that's what a traffic study looks at. And that tells you what the impact of the development is from a traffic perspective.
So those future strips, they're based on a formula, correct? That certain household would have certain number of trips and, correct. when was that formula updated, or when was it last created? Because I have some few questions about what practically happens and what the formula does, right? I live in a townhouse community. You have 1.4 parking spaces for each unit. Every house has 2 to 3 cars in my community. It's impossible to find parking. There is a lot more vehicles coming in and out of the vehicle than what your formula suggests. I have a Amazon van or a FedEx van every half an hour coming in and out of my community on a non-holiday day. Forget about holidays. Even at 8 p.m., you'll have the smaller Amazon delivery guys coming in and out, and I'm not counting the Ubers and the Lyfts and the DoorDash guys coming in. So the amount of the formula that you use, I definitely feel it underestimates the trip generations. And that's not, I don't hold it against you. That's just the formula that you have. But in practicality, the traffic generated is a lot more than what it shows here.
So Matt, just so we keep the record straight, Chairman asked a question and made a comment. You address that.
Sure. So I can understand that you perceive that there to be, that the data, the formulas that are provided underestimate the amount of traffic. I would say that in certain circumstances, that may be the case for certain uses where there's not a plethora, a significant amount of data available. But I would tell you in my 30 years of doing this, that there have been many projects that I've been involved in where we've estimated the amount of traffic generated by certain developments and then gone back and looked at those developments post-occupancy and found that the numbers to be very close, if not lower, in most instances. And that is due to the fact that it's not just the amount of traffic that's being generated, it's the fact that there's a number of projections being made and we are assuming the certain growth to occur over a certain time period. In addition to the fact that we're making assumptions for other developments which are proposed, which may have an impact on the roadway network. The data that was utilized was from the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual from the year 2021. That data is based on actual counts conducted at actual developments that are compiled into various land uses. Under the residential category, there are probably, if I had to guess, 12 to 15 different residential land uses. And within those land uses, there are subcategories as well. So there's various opportunities for you to be able to generate or determine the amount of traffic a development would generate through the use of that manual. I would also mention that that manual was just recently updated as well. They're now in the 12th edition, which was published in September or August or September of this year. And as we progress through land development, in addition to addressing a few of the minor comments contained within the September 9th letter, that we will be utilizing the latest version of the trip generation manual, which contains the latest version of the data to help provide projections as far as future trips are concerned. I would also point out that your township ordinance, I believe, requires the use, the latest edition of the IT trip generation manual, as does PennDOT. So the IT trip generation manual is the manual that is utilized to determine the amount of traffic generated by developments. I would also point out that for purposes of this analysis, we went out and counted an existing mainline health facility, at least one component of this facility, to get real world data, which shows that a mainline health facility generates significantly less traffic than the IT trip generation manual would project. And that is consistent for those type of uses. I've also found various other uses in the trip generation manual, none of which or none of which, some of which are not part of this proposed redevelopment. For instance, car dealerships. IT trip generation manual says a car dealership generates 180 trips on a Saturday peak hour, 1 hour. That's 90 vehicles in and out in a peak hour. I don't know if you've been to a car dealership recently, but I think any car dealer would jump for joy if they had 90 vehicles coming in and out there in an hour. So it's not perfect, but it is the data that we have available to us, and it is the best way for us to help determine the amount of traffic would be generated by development. And then finally, I would also say that because it's not perfect, it's expected that traffic fluctuates on a daily basis. Typically, you will find fluctuations in traffic that range from 5 to 10%. So one day, intersection could experience 1,000 vehicles. The next day, it could experience 1,100. But those are typical fluctuations that occur in traffic due to various considerations.
Let me go on. You submitted the traffic impact study. It was reviewed by Bowman, was it not?
Yes, it was.
And was there a review letter by Bowman?
Yes, we had.
July 8th letter also?
The July 8th letter was the first letter in which Bowman had the opportunity to review the traffic study dated June 16th, 2025. Based on that review letter and subsequent conversations, Bowman issued a second review letter dated September 9th, 2025 in relation to not only the parking study that was previously discussed, but also the traffic impact study.
I'm sorry, say that again. What is the date of the Bowman?
September 9th of 2025.
And did Bowman concur in your traffic impact study?
Yes, again, with the caveat that there are some revisions that need to be made to, again, the parking analysis as well as the traffic study during the land development process. But it's my understanding that based on the review and based on the conversations with Chris Williams of Bowman, that Bowman is now in agreement regarding how we're going to resolve those concerns, and that those concerns or those items contained in his review letter can be addressed during the land development process.
Could you give a brief idea of what the improvements are that are being recommended?
Yes. That's basically the improvements we've broken down in what I'll call 4 categories. First category is traffic signal improvements. Not only traffic signal timing adjustments, but also traffic signal equipment to provide for safer and more efficient flow of traffic along the main corridors of Route 100 and Route 30. Second, being some improvements to the internal circulation as it relates to the existing conditions, and some changes that are being proposed at one of the main internal intersections closest to the apartments and the existing Whole Foods. The third being pedestrian improvements consistent with the township's bicycle and pedestrian study, looking at internal and external pedestrian and bicycle improvements. And then finally, fourth, and probably one of the most impactful improvements that we're proposing, is to provide a realignment on Route 100 at the existing Whiteland Town Center and Whole Foods driveway to eliminate the fact that there's an offset in that intersection which creates the need to provide for what's called a split phasing of the traffic signal. So
there's a commonality of ownership between the mall and Whiteland Town Center, is there not?
that is correct.
So we don't have the usual problem of trying to get a shopping center owner to agree to have us tear up the front of his center while we make all of those improvements.
Correct, and the reason I say that improvement is a very impactful improvement is because normally when you see a traffic signal, especially at a four-way intersection, you will have the north and southbound legs go at the same time. They'll both have the green, while the east and west legs are stopped. And then the north and south legs stop and the east and west legs go of the intersection. That intersection is all set so that you cannot provide that two-phased operation. You need to add a third phase in where you have north and south go at the same time, then they stop, then east goes while the other three legs are stopped, and west goes while the other three legs are stopped. What that does is provide for a very inefficient operation of a traffic signal. You're taking time away from the corridor by introducing a third phase because of that offset. So if we're able to eliminate that offset by providing improvements to the, again, I'll call it the Whole Foods signalized driveway and the Whiteland Town Center driveway, you're able to take that phase out. You can reapply that green time that was associated with that third phase to the corridor and help improve the overall operations of that area.
So when you mean the third phase, how does a person who wants to make a left turn coming in out of Whole Foods or a left turn coming out of the Whiteland Town Center make if there is no option for him to make that green signal or the phase is not there?
Yeah, sorry, and I'll clarify, and I was oversimplifying it. We're not proposing to eliminate the left turn arrows or the left turn phases that exist at that intersection. We're proposing to make it a two-way operation versus a three-way operation as far as the traffic signal is concerned. So people would still be able to make their left turns with the arrow. However, we would be eliminating one of the stops in regards to the overall phase of that intersection.
To me, it looks like the same. Do you?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Right.
Yeah.
To me, it looks the same, right? If you have to make a left, you have to have a left turn signal and a signal to go through it, right?
Yes, so we're not proposing to eliminate that. I'll try to be clear. So the traffic signal operates, normal traffic signals operate where the north and south go at the same time, and that may include left turn phases while the through movements are stopped. Then the left turn phases turn red and the through movements go, but that's north and south. While that's happening, the east and west legs are stopped, correct?
Yeah, correct.
So then the north and south legs stop and the east and west legs go. And it may include left turn phases and the through movements.
Yeah, correct.
This intersection is different in that, correct, presently in the fact that the north and southbound go at the same time, inclusive of left turn phases and through movements, while the east leg and the west leg are stopped. When the north and south legs stop, the east and west leg don't go. The east leg goes, while the north, south, and west legs are stopped. Then when the east leg stops, the west leg goes, while the north, south, and east legs are stopped.
Yeah.
That's what exists at that intersection today.
Yeah.
If we're able to realign the east and west legs of that intersection, we can eliminate that third option in the traffic signal so that north and south go at the same time, and then east and west go at the same time. That is an improvement that provides a significant improvement in efficiency and safety, is an improvement that was recommended by the Planning Commission, as an improvement that has been looked at very favorably by the township's traffic engineer.
Mr. Hammond, in your opinion, does the proposed development provide safe and efficient ingress and egress to and from the public streets?
It does. The existing property provides for 7 main access points off of Route 100, Route 30, and Sweetsford Road serving the property. And we are not proposing any changes to those 7 existing access points. In other words, we're not proposing to add additional access points to the roadway network, and we're not proposing to eliminate any of the existing access points. So yes, my opinion is the development would adequately address any traffic operations, with the caveat that the improvements that we have recommended within the traffic study are implemented.
I have no further questions for Mr. Hammond.
You have, like you are saying that you're 92 spaces short and the space of the parking space needs to be used between the office use and the residential use. So how is, like, if I am living there, do I park my car somewhere for a certain time, bring it back to a
I don't
certain
think
time?
that's what he said.
He said 92 short spaces where the certain spaces will not be used or would be used at a certain time, right?
So if you were to, so what I'm saying is if you look at the site in its totality for the zoning ordinance,
Yeah.
the zoning ordinance requires that you look at each individual use, you apply the parking rate to that individual use and add it all together.
Hmm.
It does not take into account the fact that there are interactions between uses. It does not take into account sharing of parking. So for your example, the way the ordinance reads, that if you go to the restaurant needs to provide you a parking space. If you go to the Boscov's also needs to provide you a parking space. It doesn't take into account that your car is parked at the restaurant, but you walk over to the Boscov's. It doesn't account for the person that lives in the apartments that walks down the street to the restaurant or the mainline health facility or the fitness facility or one of the stores, and also needs a parking space there. It also doesn't account for the fact that an office is essentially empty at 6 p.m. when the restaurants are starting to get towards their peak, which is 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So it literally looks at every single use and assumes parking is needed for each of those uses, as each of those uses were peaking at the same time and there was no interaction between those uses, which in a development like this is unrealistic.
Let me ask you this question. My understanding is there's specific provision in the ordinance that allows you to, let's say, recalculate the number of parking spaces by using the methodology that you just talked about with the same data that you would have had if you're just counting each use separately the way you talked about. We're not asking for any relief here, are we? This is a provision in the ordinance that is permissive.
Correct. We are providing the requested parking study. And the parking study, but for that difference in the 92 spaces when you're looking at 4,000 parking spaces, the difference is that we looked at various other methodologies with parking being shared, without parking being shared, with industry standards, with zoning ordinance standards. And all but for that one instance where you look at each individual use as it was being parked by itself, all of those other methodologies show that we exceed parking and in a significant way.
I was just thought, all of those parking spots around the restaurants and retail, they fill up pretty much all day long, So I'm trying to figure out what these parking spots, like you had mentioned,
Yeah, that's like a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, may I interject here?
Yes.
Along the lines of this very issue, I'm referring to Exhibit A34, which is my memorandum dated September 19th, which provides a summary of the Bowman Review dated September 9, which you referred to earlier this evening. Comment 11C of the Bowman Review suggested as a condition of approval to monitor the parking supply as the development builds out and as the land uses are refined in order to confirm the adequacy of the parking supply. As has already been noted, Section 325-39H2 of our zoning ordinance does allow us to permit a smaller number of parking spaces without zoning relief when based upon parking studies. Bowman did, as was noted, review the study that you provided, and in their review of September 9, they raised concerns about changes made to the master plan since that analysis was completed. So they recommended that condition. Would you be willing to accept that condition?
I think it's an absolutely appropriate condition, considering the fact that we're talking about 4,000 parking spaces.
And just so it's clear, yes, on behalf of the applicant.
Okay.
I think we said before we would, but yes, we would.
And that parking garage, you guys are deciding that you're gonna probably try to get rid of that, right?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
The
Were you
parking
planning on getting
garage.
rid of the parking garage, though?
Well, last hearing, you raised that question,
I did.
and Seth responded to the question. Somebody was under the misapprehension that we're removing both of the parking garages.
Mhm.
And Mr. Shapiro said, no, there's one of them that's being removed,
Right,
not both of them. So I
okay.
think that's all.
Right, but does that affect any of the parking?
No, because that was, we've always assumed the fact that the one parking garage closest to the library was to remain, and the parking garage closest to the apartments would be removed.
Thank you.
May I call my next witness? So before we have Mr. Hetzel sworn in, I had intended to have Mr. Hammond be our last witness. However, when I listened to the tenor of the questions from the board for the last hearing, I thought there was one very large factor with regard to the overall effect of this development on the community, being the school district and the township. And I had Mr. Hetzel testify about his fiscal impact statement before the Planning Commission. I had not planned to have him testify tonight because a fiscal impact study is not a requirement. But after I heard what I heard, I think that in having the community hear what the total effect is, I think I've been remiss if I didn't have Eric come back and at least briefly give us the benefit of his rather detailed analysis, and I am not going to ask him to go through each phase of it, but I think it's important that we get this here, that we get this out for the public. So I'd like you to be sworn.
I do.
So tell us who you are.
Okay. My name is Eric Hetzel, E-R-I-K-H-E-T-Z-E-L. I'm the principal and owner of EH Creative Services, a land planning consulting company.
And Exhibit 37 in this material that I have right in front of me is your curriculum vitae, is it not?
It is.
So tell us about your educational experience.
I have almost 30 years of professional planning experience, a Bachelor of Arts degree in Geography and Planning from Westchester University, a Master of Regional Planning from the University of Pennsylvania. I've been a certified planner, member of the American Institute of Certified Planners for 25 years. I'm also a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, and I've testified at dozens, if not over hundreds, of these types of hearings.
So I get your educational experience. I'd like you to describe your professional experience, because the more I learn, the more varied that I understand that it is.
So I started out working as a land planner for an environmental engineering company, doing geographic information systems. Then I got my planning degrees, and I worked for a private land planning and landscape architecture firm before going out on my own. I worked there for 12 years. My experience there includes preparation of community and fiscal impact analysis. I directed the design of site plans for developments. I've also done work with public sector clients, townships, counties, and others. I've worked on the development of comprehensive plans, joint comprehensive plans, written zoning ordinances, zoning ordinance amendments, testified on behalf of substantive validity challenges and other numerous land use expert witness testimony matters.
Can you tell us, are you at liberty to tell us what you do for the Willistown Conservation Trust?
I also work as the director of land protection for a nonprofit land trust, separately from my private practice as an independent land planning consultant.
And I think you've said it already, but as part of your employment duties, do you regularly prepare fiscal or community impact statements?
That's one of the things I do the most of, correct?
And, well, I've watched it for most of those 30 years. Your reports are regularly accepted as credible by the municipalities that you appear before.
They are regularly accepted.
So I would like Mr. Hessel to be accepted as an expert in land planning and fiscal impact studies, and ask that he be accepted.
Board have any questions, or?
No, we're good. Yeah, thank you.
Accepted.
Mhm.
Eric, I want to draw your attention to your fiscal impact statement. That is Exhibit A38. And rather than me ask you question after question after question, could you describe for the board and the community what you did and what this impact study is intended to convey?
Certainly. That exhibit is the study that I prepared for this, the latest version of it.
And the board all has copies of it?
They should, as I would.
Yeah, no, I just handed it out in these exhibits. So you can assume that they're able to follow with you if you want to refer to any of the pages.
Sure. Just a little bit of background on the methodology that I used. I used the per capita cost multiplier method that was developed by the Rutgers Center for Urban Policy Research. It's a well-accepted industry practice to use that methodology. And as Mr. Kaplan mentioned, it's been accepted numerous times in my reports in front of townships and well vetted by township consultants in the past. So The first page of the report is really an executive summary of my analysis, where I looked at the annual revenues and annual expenditures attributable to the development once it's fully completed, not adjusted for inflation. The dollars are today's dollars, 2025. I looked at the impacts on West Whiteland Township and the Westchester Area School District, projected annual revenues, mostly direct taxes, annual real estate taxes, transfer taxes, earned income taxes in the case of the township, impact fees, primarily sewer fees. And then I modeled the costs using information I obtained from the township's general fund budget. So I examined how the township raises and spends money today to provide public services to the constituents. And using that information, I was able to come up with per capita multipliers for the residential portions of the development and per capita multipliers for the non-residential portions of the development.
Let me stop you right there. Nobody knows what capital multipliers are. That's a way of you figuring out how much each new resident will cost the township. Is that correct?
Correct.
So these numbers here in the middle column of annual expenses are the result of you using all of that information and the methodology to come up with the annual expenses for the township and the school district.
Correct. So the township, it looks at the mix of land uses in the township today based on number of parcels and the total assessment for residential and non-residential land uses to come up with two different per capita numbers, one for residential uses, one for non-residential uses. For the school district, I look at the school district budget, and generally you divide the student body into the expenditures to come up with an expenditure number per student, which I then double check against other sources in the township or the school district budget to come up with a number per school age child attending public schools. So what this executive summary, table 1 on page 1 shows that West Whiteland Township on an annual basis would experience a net positive fiscal impact, approximately $958,694 each year. That's revenues over costs.
Okay, so let's hold on that. Since you started, I'm glad that you are here to answer this. When I came on the board in 2020, we had 2,000 apartments that were approved for development in West Whiteland Township. Just as I was taking office, 2,000 new apartments were being built, approved, and being built. We had 2,200 total apartments since then being built into the township. We have seen a revenue increase of $800,000 for our income. Now, how come a 700 units are generating revenue of $900,000 when a 2,200 residents cannot generate that much amount of money? These are facts on the ground. These are numbers that are from our budgets.
I'm sorry, what number are you referring to?
The number of net fiscal impact or revenue growth. Revenue growth, just the revenue growth. That's what I'm talking about. You have $1.8 million. We had 2,200 new apartments come in. We did not see 1.8 million come in. We saw $800,000 come in.
Well, I don't know the details of those apartments and how they're assessed or appraised. I applied what I feel to be conservative per unit values to the apartments and the residential units here. And then I apply the county common level ratio to that estimated assessment or appraised fair market value number to come up with an assessed value, and then apply the tax rate of the township to it to arrive at that number. You're free to assume different values per unit to arrive at your own numbers, but I did examine some of the Hanover apartments and the assessments are fairly comparable to what I've used in this. I didn't overestimate.
I mean, the Hanover apartments are part of the 2,200 apartments that we brought in. And we are not seeing that revenue increase of that much amount. So to me, that number doesn't make sense because practically on the ground, I'm seeing a different picture. 2,200 new apartments got us $800,000. You are telling me 755 units or 800 units are going to give me 1.8 million. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, let's go through how he calculated the numbers.
You-
I didn't intend to do this, but dig down into how you calculated this. This is not rocket science. This is excuse me.
No,
This is
do not raise your voice. Do not raise your voice. I have not raised
I
my.
didn't raise my voice.
You did.
Oh, I'm sorry then.
Okay. See, it's not about rocket science. This is practical aspects of running this township. What I see on the ground, what I see incoming in income. This is what we see, facts. I'm not telling you something different.
Where are the facts? You haven't presented any facts. And my witness here is going to take you through
Okay.
how he got there.
Okay.
Go ahead, Eric.
So I haven't reviewed what you're referring to in any detail, so I can't speak to what those apartments are bringing, but there's a couple of things to note here. That net number at the end is not just the residential portion, that's the residential plus the non-residential portion. So when you have mixed-use development like this, you have aspects that offset one another, and it's a positive thing to have a mixed use where you have residential mixed with non-residential because they have different cost profiles and can bring more fiscal benefit than just monocultural development. So
the apartment right across the street are mixed use. We have residential plus commercial restaurants right there across the street. They are part of those 22.
Sorry, my hearing aid went. Tell me what you said again, I'm sorry.
The apartments across the street are part of the 2,200 apartments that were approved and built.
Right?
And they are mixed use. They are not independent or they are mixed use. They have commercial aspect of it. They have restaurants, they have shops.
Yeah, but the apartment project there is on a separate tax parcel and is separately taxed. Do you have the taxes for the Wolfson development? I just want to understand.
Yeah, we do.
I want to understand. I want to understand what you're talking about. But more importantly, for purposes of our record, I would like Eric to go through and show how he calculated the taxes.
So first of all, this is meant to be fairly transparent analysis. You can take issue with my unit values that I've assumed, but I don't think you can take issue with the fact that if you apply a specified unit value to the township and the school district millage rate, it's going to generate a number. You can say, I don't believe it. I think the unit value is twice as high than it should be. You can do your own calculation and see how that reflects in the numbers. Page 7 shows the detail of the residential profile of the development. It goes through each residential use in columns. And then the top portion of that table lays out the number of units, the value that was assumed per unit or per square foot if it's non-residential. It multiplies that per unit value by the number of units to arrive at a total market value. I then apply the county common level ratio to that, which is an equalization ratio, to arrive at what the assessed value is going to be, and then apply the millage rate to that assessed value. That's where the tax number comes in.
We're on page 7. Where's the tax number?
The tax.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So you see in the about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows down is the assessed value. You track over to the right, and you'll see, for instance, the multifamily townhomes have an assessed value of approximately 19.8 million. You apply the 2 mil tax rate of the township to that, and it yields roughly $40,000 in real estate taxes. That's how the analysis is conducted.
I'm sorry, Eric, show me on here which column you're at so that I'll understand.
So I'm on the first column where it says multifamily townhomes.
Right?
And if you track down that column to the first row under West Whiteland Township, it says real estate tax revenue, 2 mils of $40,000.
2 mils, right?
So I've taken the assessed value from a couple rows up where it says assessed value approximately 33.89% of market value and apply that millage rate to it. That yields a tax calculation of about $40,000 per year.
And that's just the mathematics.
That's just the mathematics of it.
And that's only for the real estate taxes for the townhouses.
Correct.
And then when you go to that net number on the first page, the $862,000 that I believe the chairman questioned. Raj, that was the number you questioned.
I questioned $1.8 million. I didn't question the 800,000. I questioned the $1.8 million.
And that's the combination of the residential and the commercial.
Yeah.
And it's also a whole series of fees that are collected and other taxes. And if you go over to page 7, it's not just real estate taxes, it's sewer fees, intergovernmental revenues, earned income tax, real estate transfer tax. You've got total township revenues of $180,000. So I apologize for if I raised my voice before, but sir, I think you're measuring apples and oranges. You're talking about just a residential apartment project or all of them, and that's just the real estate taxes. And Mr. Hetzel is broken down all the different kinds of uses here, has applied reasonable market values, has applied the county common level ratio to get to the assessment, and then has applied the millage rate. But he's also applied the sewer fees, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think that your criticism of those numbers based on what apartments are generating in real estate taxes is really fair. But you're the one that's going to have to make the judgment here. I think this is totally credible evidence. But again, this is not part of the consideration for approval or non-approval of the master plan. We're just trying to give the community as much credible information as possible.
I mean, I agree you're trying to give a credible information, but I'm giving the community the facts that are happening on the ground.
I think we're done. Do you have any further questions for Mr. Hetzel?
No.
Is that the end of your witnesses, Mr. Kaplan?
It is.
Are you going to move your exhibits into the record?
Thank you. I always forget that. Could I move my exhibits? Hey, I've given you, I gave a new cover sheet, so you've got a catalog of all of them, and you don't have to chase around for them.
Correct.
So, yes, I would move the admission of all the exhibits, A1 through, I think, A38.
Okay, so moved.
Thank you.
Board, do you want to adjourn into an executive session at the moment?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll put a pause on the hearing for a couple of minutes and we'll adjourn into executive session.
Recording stopped.
makes sense.
I mean, our business is there.
Yeah.
So we have to meet on Monday. Our first meeting with him, where I proposed purchasing he understands what we did. Like, I got, I think
But you won't make a deal, you're gonna leave it there. You won't make a deal.
I mean, I'm not gonna say no, but it's not, it's just like a move.
You would do like a shaving.
Yeah. We've been trying to buy it for 10 years. We got it for free. I'm gonna stand here at this podium and I'm gonna be like, Jimmy, hi.
Surround that, try to make a deal in front of everybody.
Everybody hates that guy.
Yeah, right there.
I find that he's really, I had clients that work for him.
Yeah. Now we saw that.
Ryan,
way back.
Yeah, absolutely.
so Ryan is one of my besties. We grew up together
Yeah,
our whole life.
Yeah, high school. We had a meeting 2 days ago.
Yeah, that's what
I
she was
know, I
saying.
told him.
Yeah, right, that's what she
Well,
was
he
saying.
texted me, he's like, you have nothing better to do tonight to come to a Whiteland township meeting?
Pretty much.
And I'm looking around, I'm going, where are
Yeah.
you? Hi.
Came up here in 2003. With a note. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I was talking to a lady who grew up in the neighborhood, and she's probably late seventies. She said, that little corner lot where they have. So, yeah, he really decided it. It's amazing how close it is. Yeah, I'm on the zoning hearing board now, so, but how close it is to the property. Yeah, I didn't know any of the history. I just saw it. There are a lot of. Well, that's a good thing. If there's people, if there's activities, let me know if you need more people there, because I'll, you know, there's certain things you do to get around the grad, obviously, aside from, you know, the transfer house, side of something like that. Oh, yeah, that's the problem. You have to have, yeah, basically the process. Obviously, controls. But anything that's on site, any coins in the state, secure, preventable working conditions. Oh, yeah. I'll make sure. But, yeah, I hope that the new owner, because I would, we'll make an effort to swing by and well, we'll try. He and Dave, fire marshal, and we have another third guy that's part-time. We can make an effort, or somebody else on staff. I would like to get. We tried to start a I've learned in my experience going out and just introduce it generally works.
Recording in progress.
You want to ask a public comment? No?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. We're going to start with public comments with folks from West Whiteland Township residents first, and then if anybody outside. So if anybody from West Whiteland Township has a public comments, please come to the podium, or if you're online, raise your hand.
Good evening. My name is Donald Hawes with Boja Engineering. Our offices are in Exton Commons between the mall and Swedesford Road. I had a chance to look over this plan. Work for a civil engineering firm, and I'm a landscape architect by license under the state. In general, I think this is a pretty good master plan. I like the connectivity between the different sites, the walkability and the scale of the site. I know density is an issue for a lot of people, but density needs to happen. I'm looking forward to seeing something other than a derelict mall sitting there, not getting used. I think they did a good job connecting everything between the different uses there, from the library over to the park and to the mainline health. The only comment that I could kind of come up with after going through the plans, the traffic study, is that there are users that might want another transit stop at mainline health, because I know they use the transit stop at the mall or at the library and walk over to mainline health. Since mainline health is going to move further away, that's about the only thing I could see that would be an improvement. Otherwise, I think this is a positive thing to go in there and replace them all. And infill development and redevelopment is so much better than developing a virgin site.
Thank you.
You guys taking Zoom participants here?
We will take one more here, and then we'll come to you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Raj.
Hi, Ginny Marcel Kerslake, 103 Showen Road. Well, as you guys know, I sit on the planning commission, so I've already had an opportunity to ask lots of questions, but I did have a couple from stuff that I heard tonight. One is in regards to the traffic study. You mentioned that the manual gets updated. It was updated, those figures you were using in your calculations, it just got updated in September, and you're going to run those again, like during the next step in here, in your official traffic impact study. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
To include the latest edition of the manual, I will tell you that on the residential side of things, what we've seen comparing the 2000 or the update, the 12th edition versus the previous edition that was utilized in the study, is that the residential rates have actually gone down.
Okay, and so that leads to my question: when was it last updated? So the numbers you're using, when were they generated?
2021.
Okay.
So the 11th edition was 2021. They're now on the 12th edition, which was just published in August, I believe August of this year.
Okay, thank you. And then my other one is kind of a comment. I thought there's such a big, not for traffic, but for the fiscal impact study. There's quite a big discrepancy between what Rajesh was citing, what we're seeing on the ground, and I really appreciate getting those numbers, thank you, to what the applicant is proposing. And I wonder if that has to do with the applicant's numbers being based on what they hope to sell these units for, and then that is what the property taxes will be based on, versus what people end up actually paying taxes on an assessed value, which is often on new builds, correct me if I'm wrong, ends up being a lot lower with appeals.
Yeah, we've seen a pattern where people buy houses over $1 million and they come around and apply for reassessment.
Yeah.
And we end up, because the way the county has been since 1996, they have not been updated, so it just goes back to.
Houses haven't been reassessed since like 1996, I think it is, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it's important to have that practical on the ground number. That's very valid. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
We'll go to the Zoom person on Zoom. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lonnie Beck. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I am a former resident in West Whiteland and a property owner and business owner as well. And listen, as a former resident, I get the knee-jerk reactions of the residents' opposition to this. I own a business on Whitford Road. I've been there for 19 years, and the business has actually been there for 53. Traffic and congestion are in fact worse than I can remember, and it currently takes me about twice as long to get to work as it did in 2023. But being in this township and seeing the drag of that eyesore on our mall and our town's vibe, I totally get why anyone here would champion this. It's really a chance to flip a dystopian wasteland into something that actually pulses with life finally. For the township and the residents, I have 4 ideas, and this will take about 1 minute. So one is the economic revival. That dead mall has been sucking the energy out of this area and leaving nearby shops with zero spillover traffic. Redeveloping it into a mixed-use hub with retail and entertainment will draw residents and visitors that live right here. I understand the traffic and design. Sure, like everyone's freaked out about cars, me included, but the mixed-use setup that they've proposed that I've reviewed, it prioritized walkability and public transit along with bike paths over these like terribly horrible, endless parking lots that we see everywhere. That mall is a place that I grew up in. It has an incredible amount of nostalgia for me and a lot of my friends, some of them in that room right now. But it's a black hole for our town's budget with very little revenue. It's just maintenance headaches. Knocking it down for a vibrant retail residential mix it'll skyrocket properties for all of us. So I've been to a few of these in-person meetings regarding this project, and at least in my estimation, Abrams has created a plan that's delivered on the township's visions for this redevelopment. In fact, many of ours. I won't speak for everyone in the room, but a vibrant, pedestrian-friendly town with more stuff to do is something I'm looking for as well. And lastly, at the last meeting, a township member urged the importance of including the historical buildings on the property. And after a full revision of the plan to accommodate that, that Abrams created what I thought to be an incredible redesign that showed really, really great inclusion of those properties that would immediately enhance the curb appeal of those historical properties and hopefully attract someone to use those buildings that are currently vacant. Respectfully, the township seemed to push back even when they got the very thing that they seem to be asking for. Look, this is a for-profit project. We all trade our times for dollars, but Abrams is being forced improvements and upgrades that directly benefit West Whiteland. And I've cultivated a lot of relationships with small business owners in that town and residents as well. And I'm not the only one that shares the eagerness for this project. Maybe I'm just the only one that had a few minutes to show up. So I thank you guys all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes, please come.
Did you want to go? Are you resident? Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Jason Abrams with Abrams Realty and Development. We manage Whiteland Town Center, and I just wanted to talk about the tax item that we were discussing, that charge that we place on the tenants at that shopping center, which is 360,000 square feet, is $2.90 a foot, which is north of $1 million that shopping center alone generates on tax. So I just wanted to make sure that we live in the real data that we actually are charging over there. All right?
My name is Ron McGill. I own the property adjacent to the mall that has the surround sound stereo store at 215 East Lincoln Highway. And I just want to say I'm all for this project because as I've spoken to you all before at the planning meetings, all you have to do is drive by the Granite Run Mall and see the blight that has turned out from the lack of foresight down there, where it's a giant parking lot with a smattering of buildings that have no continuity at all. I don't want that right behind me. I'm all for this plan. I think it's a revitalization for the township, for the area, and for my business too. I'm really looking forward to having more traffic go by my place because we used to get 30,000 cars a day. And if we get 7,000 from this, I'll be happy. And you should all be happy that we're gonna make the area better. And I think the traffic argument is totally moot. personally, because if somebody did revitalize the mall and could fill it up, then you really would have a traffic problem. So I think this is the best plan that anybody could come up with, and it saves us from looking at blight for the next decade or two. So that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Thank you.
Okay.
This time, I think you can make a motion to close the hearing.
Yep, I'd like to make a motion to close the hearing.
I'll second that. Any public comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next, I'd like to make a motion. As far as this master plan, I really believe it does not benefit the community. So I'm making a motion to deny it, the master plan.
I'll second that. Any public comments that are not being said till now? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have the consent agenda, approval of October 22nd, 2025 minutes, resolution